Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to use that logic, well, then all those people should have just said sorry and we'd move on, right? But no, we don't do that. And let me tell you, I take a little bit of offense to what the hell is wrong with me. I'll tell you, there's nothing wrong with me. I took an oath to defend the Constitution, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Again, I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm going to hold the Constitution, and it's very simple. We really shouldn't even have this debate. If you break the law and you follow due process, there are consequences to your actions, even if you say sorry. So we can try all of the diversion tactics that we would like. It doesn't change the fact that someone broke the law and that someone should be held accountable. It is disappointing, Mr. Speaker, that their own party can't hold them accountable, that they have such hypocrisy. So with that, I yield 2 minutes to my friend from New York, Nicole Meliatakis.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for years now, progressives in the media have disparaged law enforcement at every opportunity. From the defund the police movement to agenda-driven liberal district attorneys in cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and New York. There is a clear strategic effort on the part of Democrats to demean police officers nationwide at the expense of law and order. In 2021, according to the Fraternal Order of Police, 346 officers were shot, 63 fatally. Additionally, there were 103 ambush-style attacks on law enforcement, a 115% increase from 2020. Even as members of the Democratic Party are victims of increasing crimes, they are unwavering in their aggression on those in uniform who stand on the front lines and every day protect and serve our communities. Rather than acknowledging and thanking these brave men and women, Democrats have repeatedly gone out of their way to put the blame on those in uniform. They may claim otherwise, but here are the words straight from their mouth. And if we need to make sure that we are quoting people today, I am more than willing to do that. Police in our country are more concerned with protecting white supremacy than serving the communities that pay their salaries. Representative Bauman. Defunding the police isn't radical, it's real. Representative Cori Bush. The truth is that abolishing ICE isn't that radical. We reorganize government all the time, creating some agencies and eliminating others. Nevertheless, it is a bold proposal. It's time to be bold. It's time to abolish ICE. Representative Mark Pocan. The Defend the Police movement is one of reimagining the current police system to build an entity that does not violate us while relocating funds to invest in community services. Representative Ilhan Omar. Defunding the police means defunding the police. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We're spending too much money on police. There should be substantial cuts to police department to the police budget and a reallocation of those funds. Representative Jerry Nadler. And now they expect us to believe they support our law enforcement. They think that putting these bills forward will make the American people believe they care about law enforcement. It seems that it has taken them until now to see how out of touch they are with the American people.
Gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to the CR. The American people are $29 trillion in debt, thanks to Congress. And this Congress wants to borrow more money and more time to figure out how to run the government and how to pay for it. That is an outrage to the American people. You want to talk about courage and responsibility? Do you know what courage and responsibility is? It's learning how to manage the people's money, The people work hard every single day. They have to pay the taxes, and then they have to trust this House, this body, and the Senate to create a budget. But every single time, it's a budget that puts them further and further in debt. It is an audacity, the audacity of Congress to borrow more money and not be able to come up with a budget that makes sense and that we can pay for. What an outrage. What an irresponsibility. That isn't courage. That is not responsibility. That is out of control behavior that this Congress needs to rein in. This government should be shut down. You want to know why it should be shut down? Because the people in here cannot control themselves. The people in here don't understand how to balance a checkbook. And the people in here do not deserve the responsibility on how to spend the American people's money. $29 trillion. $29 trillion, Madam Speaker. Shut it down.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Do not pass the CR. Shut it down.
Ms. Omar.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your testimonies. Mr. Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question. That was not a question. That was I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a
This
question.
committee can attack
On February
a witness
8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
that was not a question. Thank you for your participation. On February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S.-trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. Girls before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement. Yes or no, do you still think so?
From the day that President Duarte was elected in a free election to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no, do you think that massacre was a fabulous achievement that happened under our watch?
That is a ridiculous question, and I
Yes or no?
No.
I will
Chairman,
take that as a yes.
I am not going to respond to that kind of personal attack, which is not a question.
Yes or no, would you support an armed faction within Venezuela that engages in war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide, if you believe they were serving U.S. interest, as you did in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua?
I am not going to respond to that question. I'm sorry. I don't think this entire line of questioning is meant to be real questions, and so I will not reply.
Whether under your watch, a genocide will take place, and you will look the other way because American interests were being upheld, is a fair question. Because the American people want to know that anytime we engage a country, that we think about what our actions could be and how we believe our values are being furthered. That is my question. Will you make sure that human rights are not violated and that we uphold international and human rights
I suppose there is a question in there, and the answer is that the entire thrust of American policy in Venezuela is to support the Venezuelan people's effort to restore democracy to their country. That's our policy.
I don't think anybody disputes that. The question I had for you is that does the interest of the United States include protecting human rights and include protecting people against genocide?
That is always the position of the United States.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
I gotta hold on to it for you. Okay, so in the beginning, you claimed America's greatest country in the world. I just wanted to hear you say personally why you believe that to be true.
America is the greatest country in the history of the world. It's the most generous, most benevolent, most productive, most forward-thinking, most accepting, most entrepreneurial country ever to exist. We take in half the world's immigrants every year.
Okay.
I've seen Newsroom, so if you're going to have that moment in Newsroom where you issue all the stats and say, but we're behind in mathematics, and are you going to do that?
Well, according to the United Nations...
I've seen the show. Go ahead.
Well, the United Nations could give you about 17 reasons why we're not the greatest country in the world.
I've seen
according
Newsroom.
to their happiness report.
Right.
Okay, okay, that's really good. That's a great question.
How do you measure happiness, by the way?
But here's the question is...
I'm real happy.
Is greatness...
Well, our country does have pretty outrageous rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide. Is that not an indicator of an unhealthy country?
Is greatness defined by happiness? That's an interesting question. Well, first of all, when you take in half of the world's immigrants and you have aspirational, upward-thinking people, the word that first comes to happy when you think of it is, are you comfortable with where you are? When you have a country that is based on becoming better tomorrow than you are today, you're not comfortable with where you are.
Well, then why did we just lose another rank in the last year?
Let me finish.
Is that progress?
I didn't hear what you said.
What did he say?
Can you say
You mentioned striving for achievement. That's based... Well, we just lost another rank in the happiness report. Last year we were 17th, we're 18th now.
So again, here's how I define striving for achievement. How about, guys, how about most medical patents that have saved lives, most valuable companies, most entrepreneurs of consequence, the greatest capacity to strive to serve the needs and wants of other people, not asking for anything in return. 90 out of 100 of the most valuable companies in America are from America, which comprises 5% of the world's population.
I don't think those medical patents are doing much good for everyone who dies from...
How about polio? You think the polio vaccine helped the world?
I think opioids probably kill more people than polio, so that's a little bit more on my radar.
What is?
The opioid crisis. Have you heard of it?
You think the opioid crisis is a solely American phenomenon?
No, but...
And by the way, I do have a question. Could you name a country that's better than America, that's greater than our country?
I could probably name about 17 right here.
Because the United Nations... Hold on.
Well, then...
Let me say this. I think you conflating.
Are you planning on leaving?
What's up?
Are you planning on leaving?
Yeah, here shortly.
Yeah, right. So I think you're conflating two things.
Bon voyage.
You're conflating two things, right? The country being great and people not appreciating it. That's two different things. This is the greatest country on planet Earth.
Sure, if you value money.
And whether and this is what I have to say to respond to that. Whether you're happy or not is based on your feelings. Because I'm happy. I don't want to live anywhere else, and I will never live anywhere else. And nobody can judge that, put that on a piece of paper, because nobody ever interviewed me about how happy I am. So I don't care about those silly tests and all these numbers that people put together. There's nowhere else in the world that you would want to live. And you say you do, but the reason that you're still here because it's the greatest country. There's nowhere in the world you can be free. There's nowhere in the world you can be as proud. There's nobody in the world that can kick our butt militarily. So you feel free to go anywhere you want to go, but you'll be back to America, I promise. And this is one of the only countries where you can say what you're saying and say it's not the greatest and you not go to jail.
I'm not saying I'm not. I don't believe it's the greatest country. Not anymore.
That's fine.
But, I mean, I'm not saying it's a shitty country. It's a good place to be. Like, it's a great country. It's
Listen,
just,
happiness, just so you know, is an impossible metric to measure. It's absurd
I
to me.
disagree.
It's absurd to me that they're saying they're doing surveys on happiness.
I mean, I'm a psychology major.
If I went around the
pretty
room,
good at,
oh well.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
then you know. I guess you know.
Yeah,
Never mind.
I'm pretty familiar.
I guess
with
you
how
know how
easy it
happy
is
I
to
am
measure.
because you are a psychology major.
I'm pretty familiar with how easy it is.
I love
to
these
measure
sorts of arguments. I
happiness.
majored in psychology, therefore I know how happy you are and how it can be defined.
You
What a bizarre
specifically
thing to
know,
say.
but I'm just saying.
It's an impossible metric.
Your claim is that
the way
happiness is
people define
difficult to
happiness
measure,
is different
and
from
I'm saying
person to
that's-
person. It is different from person to person. Some people define happiness in terms of how much success they have in their job. Some people define happiness by how much family time they can create. Some people define happiness by being alone and sitting alone with their cat. That's me, okay? Like, there's all different types of ways to measure happiness, so it's bizarre to me to think that they've created some mass survey at the United Nations that determines how happy we are in a nation. I have to say, I'm pretty happy too. I think the people in this room would agree that we love America, and I appreciate your psychology degree you're working on.
Do you know that America takes in half of the world's immigrants every single year? You know, it's really amazing about our culture and our identity. We're one of the only countries ever to exist, actually the only country ever to exist, where it doesn't matter where you come from or what you look like or even what religion that you practice. When you come here, you're called an American. It's not the same in European countries, these countries with higher happiness index. If you come from somewhere else and you go to Sweden, they'll say, no, that's somebody else. Our Swedish identity is being here for hundreds and hundreds of years. Do you know that Americans voluntarily gave away $500 billion to charity last year? When there's a natural disaster, when there's conflict, you don't call the Belgians, you call the Americans. When the communists were on the march in the Korean Peninsula, when the world was war-weary, it was our boys from Missouri and Iowa and Minnesota that went halfway across the world. 30,000 Americans died so that South Korea could exist today to push back the communists. And we did not ask for any land in return. You know the only land we asked for was a land to bury our dead. No other country has voluntarily sent hundreds of thousands of their own citizens to die for the freedoms of others. No other country has taken in half of the world's immigrants and still be called bigoted and sexist and racist. No other country has had 90 out of 100 of the most productive companies with 5% of the world's population. And there's a reason why there's a waiting list that is double the size of our population to get into here. It's because we have a unique identity, and that identity is built on ideas. The idea of acceptance, tolerance, freedom, liberty, that you can have these conversations without the suppression of others. Thank you for your question. Thank you.
We have to take the next question, but I will say that I always genuinely feel so sad when people say they don't think this country is great, because if there's one thing, I used to have that mentality, and it's sad. It really is sad, and it's lonely, and I'm sure he would disagree because he's majoring in psychology. But what Trump has gifted the world with, and especially me in my life, is this sense of patriotism, because there is nothing that makes you feel more united or happier or finally feeling like you've transcended against all the nonsense of identity politics and racism and sexism and feeling like you're a part of something than feeling love for your country. I just wanted to say that. Like, loving America is the best feeling in the world, and I hope he changes his mind one day.